Happy Friday. Welcome here. Happy Cinco de Mayo, Steve Sipple. Welcome to another edition of Husker Online Headlines as we go down what we think are five of the bigger storylines of the week, not only with just Nebraska, but even around college football as well. So we'll cover a lot of ground here as we tape this Cinco de Mayo edition of Husker Online Headlines. But let's get right into it. Headline number one. The Huskers land a commitment from a legacy, Keelan Smith, son of former Husker great, NFL great, Neil Smith. He goes 6'3", 200 pounds out of Liberty North in the Kansas City area. And this is an interesting one because I don't think it was on a lot of people's radars until this week. Because his recruiting, he's got Power 5 offers. In fact, he told Brian Munson he was offered by schools like Iowa and UCLA, just never tweeted those out. But it was really a Nebraska versus Missouri race for Keelan Smith, and the Huskers bring home a legacy.
Yeah. Now I see On3 has him as a 3-star athlete. I've talked to his father, Neil. Neil says he's a tight end. His son's a tight end. Will play tight end. We'll see on that, right? Is that what you're expecting?
No.
What do you tell me here, Sean?
Well, they have Ian Flint in one tight end spot, and then the other spot's held for Carter Nelson. So
what do you think?
I think he's an athlete, and I think you figure out where he grows.
Okay. All right.
I think he's a defensive athlete, if I had to guess.
Oh, well, his dad was a tight end and became a great defensive athlete.
Yeah, I think he's just like his father.
Yeah. His dad played both sides of the ball in high school, grew up in New Orleans. Well, that's interesting. I mean,
yeah, you better not say. There's a pretty good tight end there.
Yeah, I saw by your reaction, you were not pleased that I invoked the tight end in this discussion.
No.
So okay,
because there is one tight end spot left. It's being held for a young man in Ainsworth, Nebraska.
Okay.
Period.
Okay. Period. Yeah, Iowa was on Keelan Smith pretty hard. Missouri, as you said. So yeah, his dad. I mean, I hope he turns out like his dad. His dad wasn't. There is one similarity for sure. His dad wasn't that highly recruited. Not that Keelan wasn't recruited, but he wasn't a big time national recruit. Neither was his dad.
He didn't overly promote himself. I think he was kind of lower profile in terms of that. And he had big offers, but you're right. I think he wasn't out there going to lots of camps, 7-on-7 events, kind of promoting himself every weekend like you see a lot of guys do around the country. Now, he did visit Nebraska late in April, and he was offered first by Mickey Joseph.
Okay.
And then visited Nebraska in April, and that's when Matt Rule kind of moved forward with things. And this is a no-brainer for Matt Rule. I think a lot of times the story is
what
we've seen these legacy guys. Let's go back to like a Joe Burrow, even Mike Rucker's brother. Remember the tight end?
Yeah.
What about Raiola's brother?
Yeah.
I mean, Nebraska overthought some of these legacy guys, and they ended up going to Missouri or Wisconsin and being pretty good players. Yeah. And I think the potential is here with Keelan Smith. They clearly see it that, hey, let's get this guy here and develop him.
Yeah. So yeah, Neil, I mean, come on, this was absolutely one of the best defenders ever to play at Nebraska.
Borderline Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he was on the NFL 1990s All-Decade team. Now that usually gets you to the Hall of Fame. Again, NFL 1990s All-Decade team. Now he's not a Hall of Famer, and I don't know if that'll work out that way or not. But he had 104 and a half career sacks in the NFL. 104. He led the NFL in sacks in 1993. This was a great player. He was an All-American at Nebraska in 1987. Personal note: I sat by Neil in a basketball coaching class, and I was talking to him earlier today, and I said, "Yeah, you always wore camouflage pants and boots, like military boots." He said, "Oh yeah." He goes, he said, "People knew me for that, and I worked out in those boots." He said when he was in the Nebraska weight room, he worked out in his military boots. Just felt comfortable. They said it was a leverage thing. It gave him good leverage. So yeah, Neil's an interesting guy, and obviously very proud of his son. He said his son's very confident, does not want to fail. Doesn't want. he's very intent on not failing here. So it's a pretty good little story here, Sean.
With the commitment of Keelan Smith, that's now 6 commitments for Nebraska's class of 2024. And the kind of the weighted rankings that we use it on 3, they're ranked 24th in the country right now. So, they're kind of slowly climbing up with each commit they add. But 6 guys on board. I think the question I still have now is how many will they take?
Okay.
Because there is only 8 seniors on this team right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's not a lot of cap space it's going to free up to bring in a lot of new bodies, but there's going to be more attrition and roster turnover that happens again next year. I still think they'll find themselves close to 20 again, like they always do. But then you got to have room for portal guys too. I mean, managing the roster numbers is a challenge because
in this day and age, it's really become, well, let's just say it's more complex than it used to be, for sure.
And I think Rule wants to focus more on high school guys that they can develop.
Yes, he does. He has said that.
And you think about, look at the seniors in this program right now. 6 of them came to Nebraska by way of transfer portal or junior college. There's only 2, listed seniors. Now it's hard because of the quote COVID. You've got a lot of 5th-year juniors on this team too. So those would be seniors right now too. But you've got to get more guys in this program that you develop from start to finish. O'Shawn Mathis, transfer portal. Trey Palmer, transfer portal, draft picks. Samari Torre, transfer portal.
Draft pick.
3 out of 5 last draft picks from Nebraska have come from the portal. That's a problem.
It's just
I mean, they've helped Nebraska, but you need to develop those guys as well to be able to win this league.
Right. It's a different world. I mean, I can say this for the older generation, Sean. It is remarkably different how much different it's become. I mean, I just grew up at a time where you got to know players as they grew in the program. And there's still some of that. It still happens. Garrett Nelson, it happened, right? It happens with a fair number of players, but man, it's not like it used to be. And in basketball at Nebraska, my God, it hardly ever happens anymore.
Yeah, like if you get a player here for more than 2 years,
it almost seems strange.
That's why, like when you think about college basketball, like in the 80s and the 90s, I mean, players played all the way through their career.
Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, imagine, I was thinking about it the other day, like Hunter Dickinson, the Michigan center, now at Kansas. He committed to Kansas. Hunter Dickinson, for it'll be his last college year. Just imagine if like Bill Walton's, who became a star at UCLA, just said, "Oh, my last year, I'm going to go to Kentucky." I mean, it's just hard to imagine that ever happening back then, the way it happened so casually now. But it is what it is. I'm not complaining.
All right, Keelan Smith, commitment number 6 for Nebraska in
the
class of 2024. Let's move things forward now. Headline number 2, we're talking quarterbacks for Nebraska. Not only outgoing quarterbacks, possible targets. So it's been quite a week, as you know, over the last week for Nebraska. Casey Thompson winning the transfer portal. We hit on that last week on headlines. Nebraska also lost Richard Torres and Logan Smothers to the portal. I mean, there's a lot of people out there, dreamers. Would a Logan Smothers come back? And, maybe, but I have not heard that. Have you?
Nope. I've not heard anything to suggest that. It would make sense and they could use him. He would make a push challenge, obviously, to be their number 2 guy, but is that what Logan Smothers wants? That's what you have to ask yourself. A lot of competitive athletes don't think like fans and media do. Like, why would I? I mean, I wonder if a guy like Logan Smothers would look at us and say, "Are you serious now? You think I'm just going to come back just to be the number 2 guy? I want to go start." I think a lot of guys are like that. In fact, Sean, I hope Logan Smothers is like that, where we come back and think, okay, that'd be a nice little comfortable thing for the program to have Logan Smothers back as this, maybe this backup plan.
Insurance policy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But you got to think about the kid and what he must be thinking. He didn't get to be Logan Smothers by saying, "Oh yeah, I guess I'm okay with number 2. I'll just take it. That's fine."
Well, even like
Sean, I don't think they're like that.
Well, even the debate, like, I'm going to go get a quarterback from the portal to bring to Nebraska. I was at
Good
stop
point.
on Friday morning today.
Which you
today,
stop?
27th and Pine Lake. And
Okay.
actually Tom Stevens, our old friend,
Sure.
his brother runs that U stop there. And we had a real spirited debate about, he's like, can't they just go get a quarterback from the portal and bring another guy in? And I said, who would want to come here? Like at this point, when you already know Jeff Sims has a lock on the job.
100%. What was his reply? I mean, what
didn't really have a good one. And I said, look, guys that are in the portal, they're either no good, and the ones that have skill, they're in there because they want to go somewhere and have a chance to start.
Right. They want to, yeah.
So is Matt Rule going to take a guy that's not good and waste that spot on him, or a guy that's good enough to come in here to maybe challenge a guy like Sims, which I don't think there is anybody in the portal at this moment.
Well,
there was one that just ended up committing to Auburn.
Yeah.
Clay Thorne, not
Peyton.
Peyton Thorne.
Peyton Thorne,
Michigan State, going to Auburn. And that's a whole nother interesting conversation, because start of the week, it felt like Casey Thompson to Auburn was maybe going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
He visited Auburn. Then Peyton Thorne goes in the portal. It's almost like he jumped the line on Casey Thompson and the powers that be at Auburn and said, this is the guy we want.
Well, Peyton Thorne,
one game.
He has a better resume. I mean, and here's the critical thing, Sean. Peyton Thorne has 2 years of eligibility left. Casey has 1. So he could be a 2. Again, I want to stress, Peyton Thorne could be a 2-year guy at Auburn. Okay. He had a huge year at Michigan State in 2021 when they won the Peach Bowl, and he threw for over 3,000 yards, 27 TDs, and 10 picks. Now, he didn't have a good 2022. The program didn't have a good 2022, but of the two guys, Thorne and Casey, Thorne's probably the more
accomplished.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's the guy you'd probably want, and I think you're probably right. It looks like he jumped ahead of Casey. Now, Casey reportedly has 12 offers. The
FAU, Houston.
Yeah, the Omaha World Herald didn't say the names, but they reported that he's going to Florida Atlantic this weekend to check it out. And that maybe Florida Atlantic has the inside track with Tom Herman there. Tom Herman, whom recruited Casey to Texas. Casey committed to Texas in April of 2017. So maybe the pitch is, hey, Casey, let's get it back going again.
Well, then if you went to say FAU, that would tell you NIL is really not a priority, because with what Casey was making at Nebraska at NIL, that would be more salary than most assistant coaches would probably make at FAU.
Okay, now the one way I'd push back on it, you might be right, Sean. But the thing I'd wonder about, the thing I'd ask you is how did they put that basketball team together at FAU without NIL? Did you see that? Happen to see Florida Atlantic, what they did this year?
I mean, those were guys that had been there.
No, not all of them.
But it wasn't NIL. Like,
oh, come on.
Come on.
You don't put that team together without paying those guys, Sean.
Maybe it came over time, but I'm telling you, like, they're not flush with NIL money. I've been to FAU. I've been on their facilities. I've been on their campus. They don't have that kind of money just rolling around there.
They don't have to. I mean, all it takes is a couple boosters. I mean, I'm not saying they have a great campus and great facilities, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about paying players.
I think they've updated their football facilities, but
again, I'm not talking about facilities, Sean. There's no way they can put that basketball team together without paying.
I would have I don't know. Like,
it'd be the craziest thing I've ever seen.
There's just not that much NIL that flows at like the non-major level. There's some, but not much.
You might be right. I don't have any evidence.
You need the booster support and the fan support at a high level to pool together millions of dollars.
Okay. You might be right.
I don't know.
I mean, that's a Final Four team.
Yeah, I think they just had a really good team and a good coach.
That seems like, really naive to me, Sean.
I mean, they weren't even seated very high.
They won 30 games.
I know, but how about that? They weren't even seated very high.
Yeah.
What were they? Were they an 8-9?
I think they won 34.
Were they 8-9 seed? Was that their seed?
I think so, yeah.
And they should have been. They probably should have been like a 5.
Yeah, you'd be really hard pressed to convince me that they put together that team and they weren't paying anybody. That would just seem incredible to me.
When Carl Pelini was the coach of FAU, there was that one outlet, like Owl Scoop.
Yeah.
There was there's no one that covers that team hardly out there.
No.
So I don't even know if we could.
Owl Scoop did a good job, by the way.
They were like the only people back there, so I don't even know if we could get those answers.
Yeah, it's interesting, Sean. I hate to have an intense debate about something we don't know, but intuitively, doesn't that talent on that team say to you, oh, I mean, they could have just said, hey, guys, can you just do this for free? I just don't think that's possible right now.
I don't think we're talking big NIL dollars, though. I think we're talking maybe some.
No, I wouldn't rule that out.
All right, let's move on. Headline number 3, around the Husker horn. We want to cover a few different things in this topics with other sports. Volleyball.
You want to start with the setter battle?
Yeah, that's something, John Cook has a setter battle on his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, with volleyball, that's a big, big part of the game.
It's like Nebraska, we thought might have a quarterback battle. In football, they don't, but John does. John has a quarterback battle. Kennedy Orr, who's a junior from Minnesota, and then they brought in a freshman who's an early enrollee named Bergen Riley. Now, this is this is really, if you're a volleyball fan, this is something to watch very closely. This is the quarterback. And now 2 years ago, Sean, I distinctly remember John Cook came on my radio show in Lincoln and said he's handing the keys to the program to Kennedy Orr. Okay. Kennedy Orr was a freshman at that time. Didn't work out. She didn't have a great year last year. They had to go to a 2-setter system because she struggled with consistency, and I think she had some serving issues. So now she's, I don't know, she went to a camp, this thing called the WNT Open program in Colorado recently, and trained with some of the best coaches and players in the nation. She's trying to get back to where she can claim the starting job, but in comes this Bergen Riley from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, early enrollee. She played 2 sets against Wichita State the other day in Central City in the exhibition match. Kennedy Orr played 1. I mean, I don't know
where it's headed.
I wonder. But yeah, it's definitely something to watch. John's got a loaded team again, but come on, Sean. You got to have a setter.
What are the transfer portal window rules for other sports?
That's a good question.
Like, I know what football isn't closed. I mean, like, what are constraints? Because last year, Kinalea Kana, went in right around this time, actually, is when she went in the portal. Then it ended up going to Texas. But John he's got elite level 5-star talent on that roster.
He does.
And you can't play them all.
No. And again, your heart, I mean, come on, I'm kind of stating the obvious, but to me, it's fascinating because Nebraska will try. It could be a situation where they try to win a national title with a 17-year-old setter. I mean, Bergen Riley's 17 years old.
I remember a pretty dang good one in 2000 that won a title as a freshman. She was a sophomore. Excuse me, Gracia Lee Sapparo.
Oh yeah, it's back in your day.
Was she a sophomore? Writer.
Was she a sophomore?
Yep.
Yeah, it's young. You can do it. It can be done.
Lindsay Wishmeyer, Amber Holmquist, Laura Pilikowski, and Gracia Lee Sapparo. They were the 4 sophomores on that team.
Sean, that's awesome.
Nancy Mendering Metcalf was sitting out that year because she was doing Olympic training. And that takes me to my next volleyball thing I want to get on. How about Jordan Larson? She's going to give it potentially one more run at the national team. The announcement was made that she's going to train again with the U.S. national team with a chance to try to win another gold medal.
I think it's really hard to find that rush of competitiveness in this world. And I think a lot of athletes have trouble moving out of it. I mean, you just don't find it. I think for a lot of, I know this because I've talked to a lot of athletes over the years, that rush, they feel that daily urgency they feel, you just don't find that in your normal life. And I think that can be a hard transition. I'm not saying that's what it is for her, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, she got into coaching for a cup of coffee. She was on that Texas staff for a while and didn't work out, came back and just hung out in Nebraska. And we go to Fremont and we speak at those Husker lunches there. And she was practicing and training with the Midland volleyball program, the NAI powerhouse program up there. And, one of the interesting things I heard that coach talk about at our lunch in Fremont was because she's played all over the world and had training from coaches in literally different continents, Europe, Asia, wherever, she has so many different ways she knows how to play the sport.
Yeah.
The way she hits the ball, the
Yeah.
way she digs the ball, the things that she does, like she can do it at an elite level 4 or 5 different ways.
That's amazing.
And that's what makes her unique, is that international skills that she's picked up through her play after Nebraska. She's just been able to translate that. And you just wonder, like, will she get into coaching? Because we're going to have that conversation eventually. Who will be the successor to John Cook? And, right now I would put my money on Danny Busboom Kelly.
Yeah.
That's probably, if you had like a Vegas leaderboard, because we are a few years away from that.
Yeah. And I don't know what Jordan Larson's coaching capability is. It's a tough, I mean, as you know, Sean, it's not just, player X was a great player and will make a great coach. It's not that simple.
No.
There's a lot of great players that
have Michael Jordan.
It's can't coach. I mean,
would you say Busboom is the leader in the clubhouse to replace John Cook someday? Or, I mean, it can change. And
yeah, I do. I think that's I think that, now, Sean, I hadn't thought about it, but yeah.
That was it. Tyler Hildebrand, when he left to go to Long Beach State.
Yeah. Hildebrand would be a name.
He'd be another guy. I mean,
and I think Skinner, I believe, is at Kentucky.
Won multiple SEC titles. He was on that 2000 coaching staff with John Cook.
Right. So now we better get out of this, because we could really, really expose ourselves as morons as we try to break down the coaching.
No, but yeah,
for
Jordan Larson, props to her. And I want to close.
Absolutely.
Nebraska basketball, kind of news and notes here.
Yeah.
Wilhelm Breitenbach goes into the transfer portal. I saw Keisei Tominaga at Laszlo's at lunch, by the way. But Wilhelm goes in the transfer portal. According to Robin Washett, our basketball expert at HuskerOnline.com. Not a huge surprise. I think folks saw that coming, especially with the latest Josiah Allick addition to the roster. So Fred now has 2 spots left to fill, but they're putting together quietly a nice offseason. They have one of the better ranked transfer portal recruiting classes in college basketball right now.
Yeah, I really like the way the roster's shaping up. I mean, this is, you nailed it on Breidenbach, in that when I just say signed now, it's almost like pro sports. When they signed Josiah Allick from New Mexico, my first thought was, okay, this just looks like another Breidenbach, but better. Well, I think that was right. I think that instinct was correct. I thought that signaled problems for Wilhelm. I like that. I do like the roster. Getting the point guard from Iowa was critical. You had to get a point guard. The reason I like it, though, it's very simple. They have Keisei coming back, who's a dangerous scorer, but he becomes less dangerous if teams can shade toward him, commit more, more than one player to him. Well, it's going to be hard because Nebraska has guys like Jamarcus Lawrence, and Bryce Williams comes in. Rink Mass can shoot from the perimeter. CJ Wilcher is a shooter. That's the critical element to this team to me, is it's not just Keisei. What I think Fred's effectively done is take pressure off Keisei with these signings, particularly with Rink Mass, Bryce Williams. And then you still have Jamarcus Lawrence, and getting Aaron Eulis from Iowa really helps as a point guard. I don't think he could have made it work without Eulis, by the way. I think it would have been really difficult. You have to have somebody to initiate offense. I don't care what you say. Robin says it sometimes. I don't agree with him. Oh, you don't really have to have a point guard. You just have to have somebody initiate the offense. Good luck winning in the Big Ten without a point guard. It's hard to do.
I just love the way, though, Fred has kind of pivoted his coaching style, which is not easy to do when you've been doing this a long time.
It's easier when you have to, though. When you have no choice, and this gets a little easier, when you got it, when basically you have to win, and he wasn't winning the way he was playing.
And the way he came in, I mean, the style was, let's let Matt Abdelmassih build kind of a fantasy team of big names, big points. It didn't work.
No.
I mean, those guys, they're good players, but it didn't work for whatever reason. It didn't work.
Fred made a bad tactical decision by saying, Matt Abdelmassih, you put the team together. That's what
no assistant coaches have any recruiting input.
Right. That's what it was. I mean, I don't mind saying that on air. That's
like
what it
Doc
was.
Sadler, you can't
No,
have
he
a
didn't.
say.
No, he had no say.
Nate Linzer, hey, you coached the D League team for the G League team for the Bulls and did a lot, but you're not going to build any. I mean, it created a lot of, I think, animosity.
Well, I don't know, maybe, but the main thing is it created losing at an incredible level. I mean, it's almost fictional to be 18-61 in the Big Ten. Okay, that sounds like a fictional record.
It'd still be around,
right? Exactly. Now, though, as we establish, swinging it back towards the positive, I do think he has a good roster now. Now, it's kind of funny. There's a thread on our message board the other day about Fred, and there's people that say, well, if he just gets him to the NIT, I mean, we're in year 5. That's all. What I'd say that is the expectations here are pretty much dangerously low. Year 5, you're paying him a lot of money, and really, it's just get to the NIT. I guess it's okay. I don't bite back too hard on that because you did see progress last year.
There's 14 teams in the Big Ten. Who do you think has the longest drought of NCAA tournament?
Nebraska.
Yeah,
of course they do.
That Tim Miles lightning in a bottle run, that's 10 years ago, brother.
I know.
I mean,
I know.
That was a long time ago. And they just got hot. I mean, they hit shots at that season that weren't great basketball shots. They were just making them. Remember, like Walter Pitchford was just popping it up from everywhere, and Teron Petaway was like just pulling up for 3. I mean,
those were good teams though.
They were good teams. No, Tim Miles they got hot. They had good players.
Yeah, they had good players.
But can they get to that level, to the middle of the Big Ten? Because we know the Big Ten is essentially a 10-bid league, maybe a 9-bid league.
I think they are. This does look like a middle of the pack team.
And they were close this year. I mean, they were, winning a couple of non-conference games and maybe one more in the conference from being in the bubble discussion.
On the bubble. And then, I thought the loss to Minnesota in the Big Ten tournament was really disappointing. It seemed like they had something going a little bit, and you lose that game. I mean, it
cost them an NIT.
Well, from what we've heard since is that he would have had to win 2. They would have had to
That's
win
ridiculous.
2. It kind of is, but that's what I know. That's what Fred was thinking.
The politics of the NIT and how they build that bracket with geography and other factors. I mean, come on, Nebraska won enough games in the Big Ten to get in that deal.
Well, and I look at it a little more this way, and that is they looked like an NIT team to me. They were good enough. I thought they were good enough to maybe win a game in the NCAA tournament if
they beat Maryland, they beat Wisconsin.
Yeah. I mean, they were pretty good.
They beat Iowa twice.
They got pretty good. They were legit good, which again makes that Minnesota loss all the more confounding. Anyway.
And then the schedule too is a big element. I think they're scheduling smarter. That's the last thing I want to hit on basketball.
Okay.
The Oregon State game was announced.
Oh yeah.
The real bummer, whoever thought about, I mean, they must have been pretty limited with the venue, but that Oregon State game in Sioux Falls is going to be at the Stanford Pentagon the same day as the Nebraska-Wisconsin football game.
Yeah.
So
that's odd.
It's going to be, there'll be fans there, but I wish they could have played that. Like last time they played in Sioux Falls, I went on a bus trip.
Oh God, that's right. That was fun, wasn't it?
And like 50 people.
Yeah, that was a Sunday game.
Yes, and it was a complete mess, and I loved every bit of it. As far as the trip, we had a lot of fun up there.
They beat Oklahoma State 79-56. It was a great win.
Yeah, it was so that they're back in the Pentagon. They're going to play Oregon State. But what I'm saying, it's very winnable. They're not overscheduling, and we've seen this the last few years at Nebraska. They've overscheduled in the non-conference to the point when they get into the Big Ten, they're already, in the hole so much they can't get out.
Right.
They got to get ahead of the season before they get behind the season.
Yeah, and I think they can. I think they can with this team.
Okay, headline number 4. Let's talk Nebraska baseball. It's been
interesting discussion.
It's kind of, I haven't talked to Will or seen Will all season, but I got to imagine he's awfully frustrated just with the lack of consistency that his team has had. They gave up a bunch of runs. I think 6 runs in the 9th inning to get beat by Minnesota on Friday. A bad Minnesota team.
Then they gave up 5. They gave up a 5-run first to North Dakota State.
So they had a 2-2 week. They took 2 out of 3 from Minnesota, but they lose to North Dakota State. That's on the heels of the week before they lost to South Dakota State. And I think that's probably the most maddening thing for Nebraska fans for baseball you're playing these teams like UNO, South Dakota State, North Dakota State, Creighton, with far less resources invested into baseball. And I don't care if it's midweek or Friday, Saturday, Sunday baseball. You should win those games.
Oh, absolutely. They're 5-5 in the midweek. Nebraska's 5-5.
You should be 9-1.
Yeah.
I mean,
thank you.
Maybe
Thanks
8,
for saying
maybe
that.
8-2.
No, 8-2. 8-2, 9-1. 5-5 in the midweek. There's a bottom line to this discussion before we continue it. An NCAA tournament at large bid is off the table.
They got to win in Omaha.
Yeah.
And this weekend,
they got to get to Omaha first.
They're going to go to Maryland for a 3-game series, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, playing a ranked Terrapin team who is the class right now of the Big Ten. Is it possible? Can they get a series win out there? What's considered a victory? A series win? I mean, they got to get at least one win. I think we both agree on that.
Yeah, they do.
If they get swept out there
trouble.
off that sweep at Iowa, that's trouble.
Well, the other part of this discussion that's fascinating, Nebraska's tied for third in the league right now. Not bad. 9-6. That's no disaster. 9-6. But if they get swept, they're 9-9. And right now, so on the other hand, the problem is they're only 2.5 games from falling out of the top 8. So there's the Big Ten's bunched up right now. Nebraska only 2.5 games from falling out of the top 8, which is the threshold to make the league tournament. I will tell you, Sean, if they do not make the league tournament back-to-back years,
that's a problem.
Okay, I'm just going to say it. That Will would be in trouble at that point.
Because they put
and should be in trouble.
They put this tournament in Omaha.
Right.
Because Nebraska has the best fans in the conference, have created a great atmosphere, and they haven't been there.
No, it would put Will in a precarious situation, I think, with his boss.
So there hasn't been a Big Ten tournament in Omaha with Nebraska in it since 2019, right?
Yeah. Am I overstating that, by the way? I just think you can't miss the tournament. It's the top 8 teams. You can't miss that back-to-back years. You just can't. So that's something to watch. Now, the schedule after this game gets a little easier. They play Purdue. Now, Sean, there's only 9 league games left. There's only
it always fascinates me that the Big Ten only plays a 24-game league schedule. It's not a lot of games.
So you get Purdue and Penn State as your last 2 series, which those should be series wins. Maryland will be tough. Maryland has hit 101 home runs, Sean. 101 home runs.
Can they get a good start on Friday is the key for Nebraska.
Yeah. Now Maryland has a 101 home runs, but they have a team ERA over 6. Okay. So they don't pitch it very well, but they're on a heater right now. Maryland's on a heater. They've won 8 of 10. So Nebraska's not catching them in a great time, but I think Nebraska can go out there and slug and score. But yeah, the pitch. Yeah, you're right, though. Nebraska's pitching's got to hang in there.
On a whole nother college baseball note, have you been following this thing in Alabama?
Yes, I have.
Fired
their coach.
So Brad Bohannon, the head baseball coach of Alabama, was removed this week because they've been able to link gambling to him. And what happened was they played a Friday game against LSU where, your Friday is your best game, your best pitcher goes. Well, the pitcher for Alabama was scratched. It was not known by anybody, but that information was relayed to somebody close to Bohannon, given to a gambler in Ohio, who I'd be curious what the bet was in terms of dollars that moved the needle on this to get the attention. Because it's not like, I'm guessing there's not a lot of action on college baseball games. No. So if you walk in to Ohio Casino and put 10 grand on Alabama, or whatever the number was, that's going to get the attention. But they've got it on he's cooked, this guy.
It's a bad deal.
That's a bad deal.
It's a bad deal for college sports because it makes people wary and skeptical, And
they almost won the game. It was 8-6.
Yeah. It's a tough one, Sean.
Yeah. What makes you wonder is how much this happens. They caught this one. How many have not gone uncaught? And finally, our final headline, we talked earlier in the show about Keelan Smith joining the Huskers recruiting class. Let's welcome in his father, former All-Pro, former Husker All-American great, Neil Smith, joining us from Kansas City on Husker Online Headlines. Neil, first of all, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the exciting news today as your son will be the Cornhusker.
Thank you so much. You might see my hand there. It's not intentional by any means, but I'm trying to hold his phone here.
Hey.
But anyway, yes, I appreciate you guys for having me.
How's this? I mean, what goes through your mind on a day like this, Neil, when your son Keelan, commits to your alma mater?
Well, you know how kids are. They like to follow in footsteps. They try to duplicate everything that you do, and so I commend Keelan. He don't really know about my college situation, but he'll so aware of it.
Yeah, Neil, how much have you followed Nebraska? I mean, you played here many years ago. You're still down close by in Kansas City. A lot's changed with this program over the years. How much have you been able to kind of keep track of Nebraska? And I know your son's had a chance to meet Matt Rule. What do you think of the new direction of this football program up here?
Well, it's always good to have a new beginning. I know we struggled throughout these last, few years that we've had, and the legacy of Nebraska has been whole. We have always been a powerhouse football team. We're trying to get back to that, and I think, Mac, given the situation, he can build it. And I told Keelan there's nothing wrong with going to a new rebuilding. Then you can see it from ground zero. You can be a part of turning the narrative, and that's what we did. Even when I was there, not winning the Big 8 titles, but yet right behind that, it became all the winning and the continues the winning, and then the championships follow.
Neil Smith joins us. Neil was an All-American defensive lineman at Nebraska in 1987, two-time Super Bowl champ. This was the big one, Neil. You made the NFL All-Decade team for the 90s, which is that's only major league players, obviously. Now, how involved? How did you approach this with your son's recruitment? Did you let it play out with him? Did you recommend anything? How did you approach it?
Well, I really put it in the hands of Keelan. He really wanted it. He wanted to be close around home. Well, his family can get to him, and his brothers and sisters. And I just say, Keelan, whatever you decide, I'm not mad at it. I'm just, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for the whole situation where you can, people can still come and see you, and he just, that's where he wanted to go. He said, I'm all in. This is where I want to be at. I'm happy about it. I'm excited about it. And I said, well, it's a lot of work still to be done. Keelan have to get through his, his senior year of school. He have to, and I told him, I said, you could be the first one, of your generation to finish college. And I want him to finish. I want him to finish school. I want him to get his degree. He's, if he can put in on the football field, he can definitely do it in the classwork. So it's a lot. It's just the beginning. It's totally the beginning of everything.
Neil, at this age, how much does Keelan remind you of yourself in the sense that his body and his development, he's just at the start of that? And tell your story when you got to Nebraska, just how big you were, what you weighed, and then kind of what you ended up finishing your football career at in the NFL.
Well, Keelan is a long, skinny kid like I was. He was a basketball kid, which is good. He helped his agilities and everything. Kind of like the same body frame in a sense, Of course, I think I was a lot faster than Keelan will ever will be, but he won't say that. But he can run pretty good, you got to put in. I never had the weight program and the diet and the direction to how to build muscle and speed and strength, until I went to the University of Nebraska, and it changed my life. It changed my whole career, really. And once I know, that your body's your temple, you just take care of it. And then, and then when you ask for it can give back. So, and Keelan got a long ways to go as far as that, a lot of strength. He's going to get bigger. It's kind of same deal. I don't think he's going to get as big as I was.
What do you envision for Keelan as far as where he'll fit in at Nebraska position wise?
I'm eager for him. He's a great kid, man. He's really, really smart. He can fit in anywhere. I think he can. The good thing about Keelan is he can adjust to anything, and that's one of the big key deals where he can get in and fit in, and he can get himself acclimated. He's not a shy kid. He's like to voice his opinion, and he just got to learn when the right thing to say. And I'm sure I've taught him along with his mother those type of situations.
You're down in Kansas City. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about what it's like down there, coming off another Super Bowl. Just what is it like day to day in Kansas City, especially being a former Chiefs great, I'm sure it's pretty fun times with the draft just wrapping up there this past weekend as well.
Yes, can you hear it in my voice? It was a long week. The draft was exciting here in Kansas City. For me, it was a lot of work, a lot of appearances, a lot of activities that I got involved. It was big, man, and I love the fact that they allowed Kansas City to host this. I think we did a really good job, within the community. And I think Kansas City. I reach out and thank Kansas City personally and the chief because we raise a lot of money for our foundation, and these are the things and the situations, the platforms that we need to to reach back and give back to the community. And I taught the same thing to Keelan. Keelan is very, very active in the community, and he always, been there. He's done the Red Cross. He's helped with my foundation, the Third and Long Foundation. So he's really aware of how to do it and give back to the community. And I wouldn't be surprised that he jumped head in and start that in Nebraska.
Neil, what is your foundation, Third and Long?
What the Derek Thomas Neil Smith Third and Long Foundation. If you can Google it, we have a reading program here that the late Derek Thomas started. And when Derek passed, I taken over Derek's dream and his vision. And still today, 23 years later, we're still here pushing his foundation and still raising money and helping kids to learn how to read and to write and to speak, within crowds. And our graduation rate is really good. We've had a lot of kids to come back, be attorneys, be lawyers, be doctors, and they come back and speak to these kids over again. So I'm really, really pleased about where we at as far as, our foundation. And we just love what we do. We host golf tournaments. We do wine, we'll host a lot of different events throughout the year. And anybody that ever want to come to Kansas City, if you ever want to look at it, just go to our website, the Neil Smith, Derek Thomas, Third and Long Foundation, and you can follow us in that.
Neil Smith joins us. Neil, you've come a long way since you were that kid that came in here with combat boots and fatigues, and you weren't that highly recruited, right?
No, sir. I was actually I was a sleeper. I was a sleeper of the whole group. No one know about me, heard about me, but they put me together. They put me there and gave me an opportunity. I was headed to the Marines. Being my grandfather and my father was an ex-Marine and and fought in wars, and it was always on my mind. I want to follow my father's footsteps, so I can see where Keelan's at in his life and see how he feels like what he want to do as far as following us, following me and trying to mimic me, and good luck. And I know he can do it. I'm pulling for him, and hopefully they embrace a great kid that likes to get it done.
All right.
What do you think of some of these coaches at Nebraska, though, Matt Rule and the staff he's brought in? Have you been able to spend like Terrence Knighton, longtime NFL defensive lineman, the D-line coach here? Have you been able to kind of connect and meet with some of these new coaches on the staff?
Well, I have not. I'm looking forward to meeting everybody. I have not met, Coach, even himself, Coach Rule. I haven't even talked to him. And like I said, Keelan is way ahead of the game. He's way ahead of me. And, I know his whole process and all, but I'm super excited to get there and to meet those guys and, and see, actually what I can still do, but my main objective, make sure Keelan is on the right track and headed in the right direction.
Well, Neil, we really appreciate you taking some time to join us here on Husker Online Headlines. Congratulations.
Thank you
to your son and your family. You got another Husker. We're going to see you up here.
Absolutely.
That Kansas City barbecue up here with us. We'll take it up in the studios.
Always can run it down to you. No problem.
All right. Well, thanks again to Neil.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys
for joining us here on Husker Online Headlines. Man.
Wow. Now, Matt Rule would love to have Neil Smith around. You know how Rule is. He loves the tradition of this place. I guarantee you Matt Rule knows a lot about Neil Smith.
Yeah, what I've kind of gathered is he understands big picture, who Neil Smith is, his value.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just having him around other families of the program. Mm-hmm. Think about just what a
big resource. Neil walking around.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a damn near NFL Hall of Famer. I mean, I emphasize that NFL all-decade team because usually that's a Hall of Famer.
He'll get in eventually, like on one of the later. I mean, those first ballots to the, like Mick Tinglehoff had to wait several years before he got in.
Yeah, I don't know, Sean. I don't know about that. You might be right. You might be wrong. I don't know. But this was a 6-time Pro Bowler. I mean, this is led the league in sacks. Now it's exciting And I think Neil, you heard him, is sort of interesting to say. I hadn't talked to Matt Rule. He, some dads, they stay out of the recruiting process. They let their son make the decision on his own. And I think Neil did that with Keelan. There are similarities here. I mean, Neil was not highly recruited. He was the last guy Nebraska added to the class when he was when he was coming in. He was the last guy, and an offensive lineman. And they told Neil, if this offensive lineman commits, then you're not going to be in it. Offensive lineman.
It's a Jack Pierce recruit, right?
Yeah, it was absolutely, Sean. It was a Jack Pierce recruit. So Neil got in, and then, he wasn't very big, but as he said, he found that weight room and transformed himself. It transformed his life, but really through that weight room, and became a force. I mean, he just became a force.
It's interesting too that he won the rings in Denver, but clearly Kansas City is where his roots are. I got chills seeing those pictures of him and Derek Thomas, because that's the football I grew up with.
Oh yeah,
watching Chiefs on Sunday.
I mean, those guys. Yeah, Neil could rush the
Christian Okoye, Joe Montana.
Yep.
Marcus Allen.
Yeah, that was cool. We had to kind of battle to get Neil on.
It was worth the battle
from a technology standpoint, but it was really cool to have him on the day that his son Keelan commits to Nebraska.
Well, thanks again to Neil Smith for joining us. If you're not a member to Husker Online, check us out, HuskerOnline.com. We got a great special, $29.99 for access from now all the way to August 31st. Also, follow us here on YouTube. We put the show up on podcasts as well. You can find us by simply typing Husker Online anywhere you find podcasts. For Husker Online, I'm Sean Callahan and Steve Sipple.